There's a question that was asked many times in our history, both in the West and the East, more in the past than the present. The question is, what is reality? I didn't want to go into depth on the basis of a philosophical vision, but briefly on the basis of our experience, on the basis of more personal, individual, that rather than on a general philosophical view. Therefore, when we ask ourselves, what is reality? And if we were to give ourselves a reply to this question without the microphone's a bit too high. I'm just lowering the volume. There, now that's better, because I could hear the reverberation. Therefore, what is reality? In a very direct way. The reality is what I see, what I feel, what I touch, smells, tastes, and what I think. In other words, reality is everything that I perceive. That's reality that I live. That's reality for me. And it comes to mind, it's told that in Tibet there was a distant, remote village in the in a village very remote in the Himalayas. At one point there were conflicts with the central government in Lhasa, and what happened was that and they were frightened to leave the village because they weren't very well considered. The fact is, they were closed within themselves because it was a very distant, remote place. Many years passed, and they didn't know anything about the Chinese invasion, when the Lams leaving Tibet. So many years passed, and they were still there. That fixed in that historical moment. That was reality, and lived according to that. They lived according to their own perceptions. What happens is that every one of us lives reality according to their own senses. And I wanted to start from this point. We perceive reality. What is real? That which appears to our senses. And we perceive reality as reality, the information that we receive. There's a saying in Italian, well, where's it written? A while back I read that writing, apart from the great historical importance for mankind, but for a question of a more historic, I can't reproduce everything the author said about this. When something is written, the fact that it's written, it's almost as if it were validated just because it was written. Just imagine. Imagine way back it wasn't so easy to write stupid things because it wasn't it was quite important to publish things and have them published. There was a certain authority behind what was written. Today, writing is just it's the most trivial thing. We send silly messages all over the place. There's thing that once something is written, it acquires a certain validity. If it's written, it's true. But for me, I perceive how reality, what I see, what I hear, what I touch, odors, tastes, and then also I perceive the reality through my thoughts. If we were to analyze this a bit further in a philosophical way, according to Buddhist teachings, it's because reality, the reality in which we live, it appears to us as if it were exists in a totally autonomous, independent way. We're not aware that what I see are actually just colors and forms that appears to my eyes, to which I attribute a value, a name. We're not aware that what I hear are just sounds to which I attribute a meaning, and so on. We start from the idea that that which appears is real. That's our starting point. But in a spontaneous way, not a conceptual way, in a spontaneous, direct way. And when we see a reality in front of us which doesn't correspond with our understanding, with our vision, with our desire, or how things should be, we either say, oh, it shouldn't be like this, it can't be like this, or there's something wrong, it can't be true. We look for, and then we look for another absolute truth, an alternative truth. This is false, truth is this. This is wrong, the truth is this. Without being aware that we're substituting one film with another. We live within a film. I've heard it said that we live within a film for which we are the director. So it could be a drama, it could be a comedy. Anyway, it's still a film, whatever it is. The problem is that we're not aware of this. We're not aware that we, in reality, create the reality that we perceive. And with this, I'm not, absolutely nowhere am I saying that there is no external reality. I'm not saying that things don't happen, that there's not this or that. I'm not saying that external reality doesn't exist. Absolutely no way. But how each of us lives reality and perceives, and how we perceive it, we do it through our own personal filter. We live it through our own experiences, visions, and so on. But the point is, I want to say is that because for us, reality is that which appears. And in front of that, what happens is that we try to change that which surrounds us. We try to keep that which we like because reality for us is totally separate, independent from us. But what happens if I take two groups of people and I isolate them for let's say where there's apparently a long period of time, where there's a sense, what feels like a long time. I isolate them totally, and each one of them, I give them different experiences of meanings. Each one of them lives the reality in a different way. What happened? Where am I? A while back I heard this phrase, one of the most, one of the greatest inventions of time was history, because it's a creation. I can tell what I want to. I can tell you my perception of what happened. And what happens if that happens is a memory, an idea. As in 1984, the George Orwell, there was the Ministry of Lies, where I read the book in English. I can't remember the term in Italian. And they were tasked with they had to rewrite the history every day. Because it was said that the past exists and how you recount the past. After a while, nobody has a direct experience of history. So what survives is the story of the past, what was recorded. But often we say, this is the truth. I had the possibility in my life to be amongst two groups who were in great conflict between them. There was a great conflict between them, with protests, with different kinds of conflicts, etc., and which we lived, it was part of their everyday life. I found myself in between a bit on both sides, and this happened twice in two different contexts. And what I realized is that reality is found between the truths, between reality. Because our tendency in general is to have our perception of reality and to want to validate our perception of reality. And this is true. And who says it's not real? I will make him or her accept or understand that it's not true. And then who doesn't accept it is wrong. And on the other side, and I said this. I said, the truth is not this, it's that. But I'm just as attracted to a version of reality. So very often, truth is to be found in the middle. But very rarely, never at the extremes. Truth is relative, because it's the reality that each one of us perceives through our senses. Anyway, this is just to say let's just say, I'm looking for an example here. At the end of the day, I don't know. At the end of the day, what has value? It's not how we perceive reality. The film within which we live. It's what's important is how it influences us in our daily life, in our life. How it affects us. And what happens is the films start and then they finish. And when the film finishes, who have I become in the meantime? Because my actions and those of others continue. When the film finishes, there are two things which remain in each one of us. Actions, the inertia of actions, the karma, the karmic force of actions that we have carried out in that film, And the imprints of these actions, habits, emotions, etc., that we have lived. And then our being, how have we transformed, being transformed in this experience? And very often, the most important thing is not, it's not which film I lived, but what did I become? How did I react? Who did I become? And sometimes it's difficult to understand when we say life is a film. We take the remote control and try to change the channel, but it doesn't matter. However much we change channel, we're still watching a film. I want to turn it off. I don't want to see any film at all. But we're not able to do this. No, who knows? One day. But in the meantime, inevitably, we live within our own film. I had the opportunity to know some people very well who had very, very difficult experiences in their life. Situations in which they lost absolutely everything they owed materially. That was the least of their problems. They saw their reality, their world collapse totally. They saw the most basic freedoms taken from them. They saw violence of every kind. They were totally lost without a country, nowhere to live. They're situations which are quite extreme. And what I saw is that one of these people, some of them managed, despite this, to live well and to become people who are much more stable, resilient, and joyful. When you live through great difficulties, either you become very traumatized, or if you manage to overcome it, you learn to put your energy into that which is positive, even in extreme situations. When I was talking to Lapa, when he left Tibet in... So a bit of a story, I know, I imagined. I asked him what were the best years of his life. I expected him to say the most recent years, but he said no. When the first years in India, he said, we all lived in Boxer, the refugees from Tibet, which an ex-prison built by the British. When there was Mahatma Gandhi in there, near the forests, where the winter was so cold and summers very, very hot, a lot of humidity. There weren't beds, no mattresses, covers. To go to sleep meant lying down on the ground, take off your belt. And many people had tuberculosis. To eat was the food that they received as refugees. Because of the corruption, etc., it was rice. But it was the remains of the remains of the remains of the remains. It was a bit of rice full of insects and excrements for rats and everything like. So what was left after it was cleaned was not even a third. So they were hungry, they were cold, a lot of them were sick. They had no idea what was going to happen, of any improvement. They were there. They had left all that they had. They had no reference point, nothing. And he said, these were the best years. Lapa, my teacher. I said, he said, no, they really were the best answer. Because even if there were all these difficulties, we passed our whole time and we dedicated all our time to Dharma. Our time was dedicated to two things. To Dharma, to study Buddhist teachings, to meditate, to do retreats, and to debate, and then obviously there were discussions about the political situations. These were the only two subjects for activities. But we lived really well. They were joyful years. What I want to say is that we don't have control of the power of what will happen externally. We have no power over what a person will do or says. We don't even have control of the person who lives with us, so yet alone that which surrounds us. But we do have a power. We have the liberty to choose. We have the freedom to choose where to put our energy. The Panchen Lama, the 10th Panchen Lama, a master of Lama Ganshan Rinpoche, he was asked, when you were in prison, what did you do? I had to put into practice what I'd learnt. So I meditated. There's a story of the meditator who found himself in prison. He said, oh, this is great. They're giving me to eat, somewhere to sleep, and I can meditate. We have our own perception that reality appears to us as if it were real. We believe that our film is the truth, is the only reality. So when we're living scenes that we don't like, we would like that scene to change. And we put energy outside ourselves. We put ourselves in victimizing ourselves. How could this? How this is possible? This is not right. That's wrong. And very often we put our energy. So what happens when we put our energy outside of ourselves? It's that we remain in a state of non-acceptance rather than taking action. What happens is that, I'm not saying it happens this for everybody, but this is something that happens. On the other side is that I perceive my reality, and I'm not saying things don't happen, but I choose where I want to put my energy. I choose how I want to live that moment. And that's one of the most important things. Because if our inner peace, our balance must depend on that which surrounds us, we're screwed from the starting point. But when we interact with the external world in the best of our capacities, according to our values, our ideals, etc., but we choose consciously to put our energy, and by action I mean actions, thoughts and words, where there is the possibility to do something but we see that it's positive and virtuous, that which generates well-being and joy. That's where we should put our energy. And this has an enormous power, enormous. And it doesn't mean pretending there's nothing bad going on. It just means putting energy, and it means putting energy into something that is within my reach, within my capabilities. But to put energy into that which is virtuous, positive, and to live the present moment. And I've got this phrase came to mind when I woke up, in teachings of Lojong, towards the end, which is one of the signs of someone who practices Dharma in an excellent way, or who's made great strides forward in acquiring love and compassion, an objective to reach. Yi means mind, means joyous. In the translation they wrote Pacific, that would be Shide. Yide means a joyful mind, a mind that's in a joyful, peaceful state, balanced state. Kun means continually. Gen means mantenere, to sustain, maintain. One of the signs of having one's own stability, inner stability, of practicing correctly, familiarizing ourselves in a deep state with love and compassion and wisdom, is that whatever situation I find myself, whomever I'm with, I manage to keep an inner state of peace and joy and balance. Very often we're like a wave in which when things go as we expect them to, when the film is that we want to see is there, but at a certain point, then there's the ugly scene that inevitably happens and we crash down. And then something else that we like, we go up again, and then something happens that we don't like, and we go down again. And then sometimes we go down, and then a little bit up, and then we go down, and then other periods we go up. We are totally, how can I say, malleable, manipulable. One of the signs of this is that just imagine a state in which you're really well, Joyce. You feel really good. What do we need just to lose that joy, stability? Just one word. Or a piece of information. A memory. A thought. Is that right? The objective is to make the wave that was up and down like this becomes more and more gradual, more and more even, more balanced, in which each one makes his or her own choices with awareness, interacts with people and situations, using one's own sentiments, intuition, and consciousness. Obviously, each one of us perceives reality according to their own consciousness, experiences. It's also right that it be that way, even if we don't always have we're not always consistent in our choices. Each one of us interacts with the day every day, every moment of our lives, always. We make our choices, we interact. I'm not talking about being in a disassociated state, a detached state of the world. But at the same time, when I interact, I make choices, I live this without losing my balance, without going up and down. Because this going up and down causes, amongst other things, at the base, it's caused by believing that the film that I'm watching is the truth, reality. That's the point of departure for this. That's where it all starts. This subject is a little bit delicate because it's delicate because one can arrive at a nihilistic point of view of the world. But the fact is, our perception and therefore our sensations, and consequently in the major part of our lives, our thoughts, memories, and the thoughts towards the future are created by the information that we perceive, that we receive, and the thoughts that we have. This reminds me a scene that I witnessed once. I don't know how to judge it. I was a bit shocked, but the first impact was I thought, this is crazy, this is absurd. I was with Rinpoche. We went to Nepal to find a Nepalese Theravada monk, one of the oldest Theravada monks in Nepal. And before we entered in his room, his attendant, he said to us, look, you're very welcome, but there's a rule. We don't talk about ugly things. Because the doctor said he has a very, very delicate heart at the time. And he has... And he's a very sensitive, loving person, and this can damage his heart. He wants me to read as you can't see very well, he wants me to read the newspapers to him. But when I read the newspapers to him, I change the news, the bad news, into positive news. Whatever news is not nice, I turn it round the other way. So that they robbed something, they stole something, I say they gifted something. I invent the newspaper every day, otherwise his heart might suffer. So please don't talk about problems that there are. And I thought, well, this is absurd. This man who has his stability, and they're treating him as some kind of half-wit. Well, it's something to think about. What happens is that very often what we see and what we consider to be real is not so real. I remember there was a period in which I watched many interviews so I read about 50 articles, interviews in the newspapers, were each one of them only about me. I've read about 50 articles written about me, and only one of them corresponded to what I actually said. The others just made things up. And then from then I thought, well, but even if we take a group of people, friends even, and you ask me and ask you something about another person, I relate. If the person, for example, if I tell you about somebody to whom I have a very strong attraction, I will automatically I embellish more the positive aspects of what happened. But if I talk about somebody who I don't particularly esteem, I tend to diminish the positive aspects of what happened and emphasize the bad things, the negative things that happen. This is generally what happens. This is what happens. This is what happens in communication in general. What we receive is information which are inevitably transmitted through desires, aversions, attractions of people. Therefore, one needs to be very attentive about what one considers to be reality. The conclusion of this all is that every minute that we live starts and finishes. I remember once I went to find Latte Rinpoche, who is one of the main disciples of Trichan Rinpoche, one of the greatest masters in recent history, and lived in Ganden Monastery. I didn't want to talk to him about anything in particular. I just wanted to ask his blessings and say hello. But he spontaneously started to talk spontaneously about disputes in Tibetan society regarding the Dharmapala, Dorje Shugden, really very difficult, heavy stuff. And he said the following thing. And he's kind of let off steam. He said, the good thing is that even bad things are impermanent. And that time I said, that's a nice way of seeing things. Impermanent, let's see when. And what happens is, today, after many years, I look and see that the situation, in particular, that which I was talking about, has actually changed. And someone might say, things aren't as they were, but things are never as they were. Things inevitably change and transform every moment in every way. But what happens is the moment in which we are, the reality that we perceive is, even then, it's in transformation as we experience it. And when a situation finishes, what remains? Our experience, the actions that we carried out, the inertia, the force of our actions, and also our person, our memories. Who have we become? Who are we today? Our transformation. That's why I say, in general, one of the most important things is to put energy into that which gives good results, independently of that which happens around us, independently of where we are. Put our energy into that which is virtuous. Cultivate love, gratitude, respect. It's easy to say. Can all sentient beings have happiness and in this course? This as long as it refers to people who have a similar worldview as mine. No, that's not the way it is. And it's because of this who think that's right. It's exactly when it's a very good point when we encounter somebody who has a different view from ours to see where our love and compassion. Anyway, we'll leave that apart. It's another subject. The fact is to choose with ourselves the priority of where I want to put my energy. What do we want to live? Because at the end, because life is conducted with perceptions, thoughts, choices, experiences every day. That is when life takes place on this level. And what do I want to live? I personally want to live that through which my interactions make me a better person. It's more how I want to live situations, not what situations I want to live. I want to be sure that I create a positive force for me and for others. I want to be a positive interaction for the world. And I want to live with joy. I want to be in peace. Independently of where I am, who I am, in what situation, I'll adapt to what is there. But at the same time, how can I say? I'll leave. It's as if it were as kind of taking a position. I will not let go of my inner peace, my balance, my joy. What will happen. But I'll put my energy in that which is virtuous, which is positive, which is joyous. Principally, more than joyous, that which sustains joy and peace and harmony. Like Ganapala and others like him, when in the most difficult situations in their life, they lived looking back, they viewed it as one of the most best parts of their lives because they put their energies into that was positive. It's not from an external point of view. The situation did improve for them. When I asked, they had more possibilities, less illness. I know many of those people, these refugees, they had TB and they had injections, but they didn't have money to buy the syringes. So what they did was, so they used the same syringe for everybody. What happens when you use the same syringe? Then you lose it doesn't work anymore. So what did they do? They would sharpen the needle on a stone. But I know people who were treated with TB for years and years. Eating meant taking a piece of bread this size, totally hard, full of mold, that was at least 6 months old. They had to take off the mold, put it in water, hot water, with a tiny bit of milk. That was their daily meal. In the monasteries in South India, for at least 10 years, they lived like this, in the 70s and 80s. And when you ask them, what was life like? Well, they say it was joyful, because they passed their time as meditating and studying Dharma. It wasn't their minds weren't occupied with this, that, and this happening. They shouldn't be like that. Their heads were full of, because bodhicitta, they were occupied by philosophy, just studying Dharma, doing pujas, things that generated good, virtuous energy. Because we can have the best conditions, material conditions in the world, imaginable. But if our head is full of the things that generate fear, anxiety, sadness, rancor, aversion, etc., that is the film that we live. We can be in a complex, difficult situation, and so on. For them, as it was for them, all of them. Each one of them had lost at least 2 people, members of their family. These Tibetan refugees in India. Everything there was destroyed. They had no material prospect for their future. The present was extremely poor. The Gompa in the south of India, when they arrived, was a bamboo hut. Lama Rinpoche, he did his Lowry exam. He got the first degree granted in south of India in this wooden bamboo hut. At least it wasn't. And they did the pujas in this bamboo hut. But the most important thing is, even in the face of so many difficulties, the memory of those people. I talked to a few people these days. I didn't speak to one person. None of these people said that it was a bad time, because the film that they were watching was a positive film, and the film created not so much by that which happens externally to us, but mainly how we occupy ourselves with our thoughts and our actions. How do we occupy our inner space? It's as if, let's say, lockdown. For someone who has, it's a wonderful opportunity for somebody who has, who can fill their lives. It's a wonderful opportunity to do a retreat. There are people who spend years and years wishing to do a retreat. But for those who don't know what to live the lockdown with fear, with anxiety, don't know how to who don't know what to fill their minds with positively. It's an absolute torture. What I want to say is that beyond the situation that each one of us lives, let's confront each moment of life in the best way, according to our own comprehension, sentiments, intuition, capacity. That should always be. But let's do our best to fill our inner space with that which is positive, virtuous, learning new things. I remember this young boy in a hospital. He was in Brazil. He was sick. He had a tumor. His life expectancy was very short indeed. But he passed his days studying, not because he wanted to become something, because he knew he had very short time to live, but for the joy of learning. And this is a wonderful example, a person who, a situation of difficulty and pain, and fills his time being in a state of marveling at the things that he could learn. You could learn languages, astrology, medicine, and infinite things, useful information for life. We can nourish ourselves with information that enriches ourselves as a person. Or we can fill ourselves with information that increases in paranoia, attachment, fear, anxiety. It's our choice. Therefore, I beg you, let's put our energy, our thoughts, our attention in that which generates joy in the short, medium, and long term. That's important. And otherwise, we'll always be. Otherwise, we'll just be waiting there. We're waiting for a moment in which who knows when that this, that, and that will happen. But history teaches when there's one problem, after that there's another problem. So that point will never arrive when things will be exactly as we want them to be. Therefore, what is history teaches also is that who manages to live his or her life within a space full of joy and well-being, inner space, independently of the situation, external situation, these people live well. And we have the good fortune of having beautiful things to fill our inner space. If somebody says, but that means I'm not seeing reality. This implies that I don't see reality. But I'm not saying that we should make decisions on the basis of that which doesn't exist. Okay, if I see danger in front of me and I don't do anything, I just go ahead, that's not advisable. Obviously, we should make a decision and navigate the situation as well that confronts us, but knowing that there's no such thing as a perfect decision. In every decision, there are aspects which are good and aspects which are bad. There's no perfect decision. The important thing is to live with joy, to fill our inner space with that which is positive and virtuous. Not to live our inner space with this one said and this one did that and he said that, but I would have said this and he should have done that. Let's fill our inner space. Let's live our lives with that which can sustain, create well-being, a state of well-being. And what we have is Dharma and knowledge, to learn new things. There are so many wonderful new things to learn. Dharma for me is most excellent. Art as well. Knowledge of many things. Sport, there are so many things where you can put your attention. Okay? So I wish you all to fill your own lives with beauty, with beautiful, joyful things. That's important. And that only depends on us, not others. There are those who manage to do this in prison, for example, between one torture session and another. If there are people who manage to fill their own lives with beautiful things in terrible, extreme situations, why can't we do it? We can do it. It's a question of choice and to make it a habit, to direct our energy. Okay? And something which helps, let me say this, and to choose consciously the information that we receive. If I pass the days reading a Dharma book, for example, the other day I was the other day I was reading a book on the previous lives of Buddha. I was like entering another universe. But if I put that was a beautiful experience, entering to another universe. But if I just reread the same old news, it's not so good. We have to consciously choose the information that we interact with and that we fill ourselves with. Okay? Let's make our dedications.
Jetsun alame kutse rapten chi nam karatin le chokchur gepada losan tempe dreme sasumgi drove munsela takto ne gyurchi kewa kuntu yanda lamada dralme cheki pela longche ching sada lamge yente rabzone dorje change kopa nyur tobe sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin nyinsen takto delek pe kuncho sumki jingi lo kuncho sumki ngodrobotso kuncho sumki trashin shon. All'alba o al tramonto.
At dawn, at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Tashidele. Everyone have a nice day. Thank you, everyone.